Hello, good afternoon, everybody, or wherever you are in the world. Greetings to you. I am honored to have James Martinez on, who has been researching MK Ultra going back to the 1970s. He's a media ecologist, radio personality, a pioneer in disruptive tech and their effects on culture and human awareness, author. And I mean, your bio would take like 5 minutes to read. You've accomplished so much in your lifetime. So we really appreciate you coming on. And viewers, if you've got any questions for James, please put them in the chat. And we've got James's X link and Patreon link at the top of the YouTube description box as well. So, what brought you into this field, James?
Well, it's a long story, and I never commercialized myself to be in this position. I was one of the original MK Ultra whistleblowers. I wasn't in the program. I exposed an aspect of the program. My colleague was the first guy, which most people don't even know. His name was Walter Bowart. He wrote the 1978 book Operation Mind Control, which was the exposure of the church regarding the use of neuroscience technologies and behavior modification programs being used by the United States on civilians. So um, I came into this area, and he became my business partner and kind of best friend because of an aspect of that neuroscience that was being utilized on civilians in the United States for the faking of alien abductions, which was going on in the 80s. So this area, way back then, and this is in the 90s when all of this was going down, and my involvement, um, I was introduced to Walter Bowart, and he currently had all the neuroscience and technology that uh, allowed all these programs to be working, which was basically um, creating the template map of where we are today by creating a what Jose Delgado would call a um, psycho-civilized society. So I was introduced to him, and I brought in a missing piece of what that neuroscience was being used for in culture. Now, remember, this is many, many years ago. I was sort of behind the national security curtain when I was 20 in this particular area. And this particular area was the pinnacle of technology that was the end goals of what we are seeing presently today. So, what I did was kind of by advisors that I had at that time, because I was very young, I did more listening than talking. I was essentially uh, cajoled or pushed or suggested to go into the area that would ultimately um, decentralize all of this abuse that we're undergoing, and that was in the energy sector. So, if people look me up, they'll find related stuff to Operation Mind Control, but they'll also find an enormous amount of my activity in the energy sector, specifically with coal fusion. So, this is what's really happened, and what I've seen all over the web, all over the place, is um, a lot of catching up the public is doing. I mean, initially, the module of communication that was respected at that time was the book, and when my involvement was with Operation Mind Control Volume 2, the Special Researchers Edition, which I published with him and paid for, and they made minimal copies at that time, and it was the follow-up of all the neuroscience and effects of uh, this behavior modification that was being utilized on the public at that time. So it I had access to all the major freedom fighters in the world, really, at that time, that were behind the national security curtain. One of them was Colonel Fletcher Prouty. People recognize that name from he played Mr. X in JFK's Oliver Stone. He was the Air Force colonel that ran JFK's all his black operations, and you'd be surprised how much he knew way ahead of everybody else about an array of topics, including the extraterrestrial one, the financing of all global operations for black projects, how it was being done, all the neuroscience associated with where we were headed as a species. And it's because of all this and years and years of the commercialization of this subject matter, which basically came from us. We never made money. Our goal was never to make money. It was to educate the public and get them ready for what they're about to deal with right now, which is basically an extinction level event of the likes of nothing we've ever understood or dealt with before. And I'll just, when people hear this and they'll go, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the end of your normal, organic, cognitive liberty perceptual process. Not to corner you or criticize you at all, but when I look at you in the video, I see your placement of these devices here. Okay, that is what in the technological world and business world will be retrofitting via microescalation technology to the user to prepare them for what's about to happen, because the cell phones were originally designed for to get the human nervous system ready for interruption, pattern interruption, and also training for telepathy. So the reason I came on and did this because we're in a huge, like, monolithic crisis and situation. Everybody is completely, totally misdirected, and all the media environments have what's relevant versus what you're seeing. And the whole world is concerned about the pedophiles and Epstein and all that. And if you were to calibrate what's the most important thing going on, it's never what you're seeing and it's never what's discussed. Because in the United States, that country ended in 47 when they initiated the National Security Act of 47. It basically chopped it off, and there's people behind it. They're in tune with the real world, which is Star Trek level, and then everybody else in Disneyland. So it was suggested and encouraged by people that I'm working with that are in the brain-computer interface world to prepare the public to essentially, maybe for the first time for some, to reclaim their right to exist, reclaim their right to free thought, reclaim their right for their own management and technology and cognition processing, to claim their right as co-creators of God, to claim their right to be here. If you're here, you're supposed to be here by design. And this is essentially a pep talk and a way of informing the public through your medium here in a space here, cyberspace, to make their declarations with the courts and with the elected employees that are aiding and abetting this process right now. So that's why I'm coming and doing this, because I'm heavily involved and have been involved behind the scenes for a very long time. I don't belong to any political group. I'm a lone wolf. I work alone by contract only. I've already made declarations in the United States in the county recorder's office and with the UCC about the declaration of my own neurocognitive rights because of what's going on. When I saw you covering some of the effects of MK Ultra, specifically with the gentleman out of Dallas, talking about dissociative identity disorder, who we were dealing with a long time ago, very nice guy. At that time, when we were dealing with him, the mental health profession and the courts had no idea how to treat dissociative identity disorder. So I'm with all that said, I wanted to kind of say where I'm coming from, why I'm here, and to insert that into a beginning place where we can talk, and I'll gladly answer any questions I have that you may pose.
Appreciate that. Absolutely fascinating. If we could go over some of this a bit more slowly, then. So
Sure.
one of the first things you referenced was there was a operation regarding alien abductions. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. Um, I have gone on record spoken about this. Became aware of it in the early 1992. Um, During that time in the United States, uh, they were just beginning to talk, and the subject of alien abduction was just being discussed. People associate that world and the publicity of world about that with Dr. John Mack, the author, and Bud Hopkins. Um, so the reason alien abductions were being faked, it was to cover up the real ones. And the real ones they wanted to cover up because of the uh, upgrade these contactees had, meaning increase in IQ, change in physical biology, enhanced human perception, things of that nature. So, one of the people that was probably one of the most famous unknown abduction cases was a woman by the name of Marianne Shenefield, who was the protege of Dr. Andrea Puharich, who was the CIA contractor who kind of discovered Uri Geller, the Israeli spoonbender. So there are two people behind the scenes that were uh, abduction cases that were unique because they had undergone mutations in their entire being. This particular woman was blinded and she developed enhanced brain cognition and perception. So she could see while she was blind. And she had a huge story. And if people look up that name, they can find her, though she was very little publicity. So when I entered her camp, I was kind of her protege for about 10 years. And then she used me to investigate the abduction phenomena that was going on. And we discovered through her techniques and her abilities allowed us to see that they were using robotics, drugs, and advanced forms of hypnosis to induce and control the narrative for what's going on behind the scenes, which is extremely important. Now, back then, that was a huge secret. You didn't even talk about that stuff in public at all. Um, I was involved in a part of the disclosure with Bob Guccione, who ran Penthouse magazine. People look up the alien pictures in Penthouse magazine way back. He was involved with the disclosure of that as well as advanced technologies because he was running um, a magazine called Omni as well as Penthouse. And he was the richest of the publishers in New York at that time. And he was involved with the disclosure movement. Not many people even know about that at all, because this goes way back. And when people think of MK Ultra, a lot of people are just discovering this, but they don't know the elements of it, how it operates. I know who's intelligent when they speak on that subject, and I've run across two in my life that really understand the mechanics of it and how it really works and why it was who's responsible for putting it together. So it was that aspect because they were using technology that they discovered post World War II in the United States via the Tavistock Institute, how to install memory, how to distort memory, how to erase memory. Um, and this has been illustrated in movies for years. The Bourne Supremacy was one of them. That whole franchise was built on basically um, what I did, which is basically essentially coming out and talking about how this process works and what they've been doing. I had one little aspect of it. It was Walter Bowart that really laid the foundation down and took the bullet for everybody because after he finished writing that book, it ended his career. And we spent enormous of time behind the scenes. Um, setting up what was today it's going to be resurrected, the Freedom of Thought Foundation, because we knew the end goals of all of this was going to be to end your free will, end your identity, end your standard pattern recognition, which allows you to create an identity that's yours by choice, and your own evolution and your own spirituality. All these things would be erased. Most of that stuff now is being talked about in public, but way back then, nobody talked about that at all. Nobody wanted to hear it. It was so far advanced. It was just pure science fiction to anybody discussing that, except for the informed people that knew behind the scenes. So that's how that aspect is going on. So what we're seeing in the whole disclosure thing is a very engineered, perceptually managed disclosure to create a conversation while certain people shape and sculpt what is known and unknown about that particular thing. Because if there was actual real disclosure, they would disclose and people would just show the aliens and it would be done with. But that's not what's happening. It's a very engineered, and I know all the people involved, and I don't agree with the way it's being done at all. And I know why it's being done this way. But to answer your question, that was how I got involved with Walter Bowart. And my entry point to the whole thing was the discovery of the mechanics on how they were faking alien abduction.
So, what are the techniques for erasing people's memories?
Those something that's called a screen and scramble, and that utilizes electricity and certain frequencies that are inserted on the brain while they're either in a trance state or unconscious. Um, Beginnings of that actually were done for shock therapy when people, everybody may remember A Beautiful Mind movie about the gentleman that was the Nobel Prize winner in game theory. He had a schizophrenic event, so they say, and they put him in, and they basically used that type of technique to alter the synaptical sequence of memory and also distort time. That was originally a torture technique. That's one of many. Hypnosis. I don't think people really understand that hypnosis, LSD, and all sorts of massive amounts of drugs other than LSD were designed under events where it was linked with child abuse and torture. These two elements are what is behind the neuroscience package, which got us into this position in the first place. I can go into detail of that, but I don't want it to be used by other people, which is why I don't talk about it. The exact neuroscience of it, but people have heard the trauma-based mind control, but they don't say how the trauma is induced and what the trauma does per se. Because what is interesting about the technology and what they modeled it after is when the National Security Act was passed in 47, they modeled it after a mental health condition, which today is called dissociative identity disorder. What I mean by that is, in terms, if you're going to model a country and take it over, you have to bifurcate it so that one aspect of it isn't aware of the other aspect of it, like two hemispheres of the brain. And when somebody is traumatized, it bifurcates and creates sections of the person and kind of fractures the organic whole so that one position of the personality is unaware of this position and they don't talk to each other. And you have the beginning of what's called compartmentalization in the intelligence community. So it was this neuroscience that shaped the culture and the powers that be in the United States. That's how they did it.
So, you got a viewer question here from Anonymous who wants to
Mhm.
know about shock therapy being used to make soldiers overcome not wanting to fight.
Uh, yes, all sorts of techniques. It's not just that one. There's many techniques. There's sleep deprivation. There's putting the body in physical moment. I don't want to go in through all the nature of it, but it's all designed to stress the nervous system, both of them, parasympathetic and central, to put your brain in a state of emergency, so that it has to put it in a survival state to deal with the process as it's happening. And there's easy ways to get people to fight. But one of the torture techniques that was far more effective in doing that than frying to somebody's brains is just generally sensory deprivation. Sleep deprivation is a nightmare to deal with. You can get anybody to do anything with just that. You know, all this other stuff, that was just utilizing big budgets to torture people.
So you're saying sleep deprivation is one of the most effective techniques?
Oh, totally. That's a very, very dangerous thing to do to somebody. And when you get somebody in enough of a restored state, because your brain works on various resource states of electricity, and when it's put into long-term physical stress under one, like beta or theta or anything, for a long period of time, it is going to alter how the brain and the person ultimately works in their cognitive reality. Because this is it's always been about um, controlling human perception and controlling values of the human perception of a person in culture.
So Kat is asking if this ties into Havana Syndrome.
Yes, it does. It does. In fact, I have one of the reasons. I mean, the reason I came up to do this thing with you is to announce the brain-computer interface and what we're about to face, and it is related to Havana syndrome. And there was the first lawsuit in history regarding this whole thing was filed in Texas by an attorney named Anna Toledo. It was the first lawsuit filed ever, which made claims against neurostrike weapons being used against civilians. These are neurostrike, meaning weapons against the brain and nervous system, which would basically soft kill weapons that would utilize damage to the person and fracture their personality, memory, and then they'd die slowly, and then they'd be done. Havana syndrome thing is directly related to these weapons that are being used by multiple countries. It's not just the United States, on civilians and elected officials. So when RFK Jr. was running for president, and he was a presidential candidate, I was asked by one of the top researchers to hand deliver information to him about that, because he's one of the very few people in the world that has any idea how these systems and the level of technology that we're at right now in terms of warfare. Because, you know, when people look at warfare, they think it's ships, airplanes, bullets, and tanks. And that is completely obsolete. That's just for business. If you want to do warfare, that's the really old school method. And there's a lot easier methods to control and kill people than these methods. That's all for show. All the battle show, all that stuff is completely obsolete. And that's not even the tier one level of weapons that we have. It's just a joke, but it's just for the public to see.
So Neurolink is an American neurotech company developing implantable brain-computer interfaces. So are they and Musk playing a role in what you're describing?
Yeah, they absolutely are. And they're Musk isn't even a real player on the board. Everybody associates him with him wanting to chip you for his Neurolink. But he's not even considered a real player in the intelligence community at that level. BlackRock is, DARPA is, and the Chinese are. He isn't so much. Plus, they don't need, you don't need to chip the brain to control thought or control cognition or any of that. That's kind of old. They are involved. They don't know the entire playing field of what's going on at all, especially Musk. He is not been fully briefed on exactly where the whole thing stands, but I hold him accountable for putting that into the public space, because people associate that with him, but he's not entirely responsible for the whole thing. And he hasn't had the conversation that everybody needs to have, which I've just had with people with the Galileo Institute recently in the last 48 hours about that, and where we're really at, and where we really need to now get involved. Nobody can be a spectator anymore. If you are, you're finished. You're done. You won't be running your brain or your own thoughts or your life. You're going to be hodgepodged into a 15-minute city. You'll be eating all their foods, and you'll die slowly, if not quickly, with what they've done. Now, if I said all this many, 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 many years ago, people would have thought I was completely, totally crazy. So I've made it a career only to discuss and talk to people that actually are involved in some form or aware of this, because I have not commercialized myself at all in the public space, just because it's such a mess right now. It's an absolute total mess of what they've done to us and how they've done it and why they've done it. And we're at a position now where people, they need to stand up for their cognitive rights and their right for their own existence, literally. That's where we're at, because what the World Economic Forum is doing is they're making these declarations about ending humanity in its current form and putting it into a silicon-based life form, which we're kind of almost already there. That's the issue. That's everything. It's everything. Trust me when I tell you. After everything I've been through and what I know, that's where it's at. That's the high ground of the whole thing. All the other crap people are seeing with Trump, and when the reset is going to happen, and what's the future of money, what's the future of human labor, and all that other stuff, that's pale in comparison. That's just the cleanup crew coming in after they make everybody merge into machinery, whether it's by voluntary compliance or not.
So you said you discussed this with an institute, I think, in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
What were the most surprising or shocking revelations that were discussed?
Well, Greg Braden was on there, notable authors, about 250 people from all over the world that actually have figured out what's going on and where we're at. And there wasn't one person on there that said this is a good idea and this is where humanity should be going. Not one. I listened to everybody. I was invited by a German neuroscience to be on this call. And everybody knows we're at this moment in history now where what we really should be doing is the biggest unification in the history of history. Drop all of our bullshit, all of the name calling, all of it. Black, white, red, yellow, brown, all need to come together for the first time in history and really have a chat and a talk and cut off all our biases and perceptual crap that impedes us from unifying. This is our great moment in history right now. I'm telling you because I'm the chief advisor for the brain computer interface for the U.S. This is the BCI group that heads up what's called Insights, INCITS.org. This is the international division of all the countries that are deciding what the rules, standards, and technologies are going to be for the brain computer interface. None of them are elected. You don't know any of their names. They're making all these decisions which will determine public policy. Our governments and everybody that you know in government, they're not telling you anything. Why? Because most of them are not informed and they don't know shit about what's going on at all. At all. At all. Okay. So when I got on with the Galileo Institute by invitation, there's about 250 people there from all over the world. Everybody said, this is it. We cannot be quiet anymore and something needs to be done. Period. Because if it's not done, we're finished. So I will tell you, and I'll tell your audience and the people that may hear this, whether it's live or in the future or whatever, because everything that's done in digital is all going to be collated and harvested. So this live event that we're doing here, some people may not see it live. They're going to see it 10 days from now, a week from now, a year from now. So it will be compartmentalized information. The people that are actually seeing this in real time need to know that we're at this key moment. And one of the things I've done, because everything is going to begin and end in a court of law, people need to start making their neurocognitive rights and declarations in the county recorder's office. They need to be doing it with the UCC. They're already doing that in the United States. I've already done it. Other people are starting to do it already. There's going to be the biggest change in world history will be happening and decided by the World Court and all the highest courts in all the lands, because they're all the lawyers and everything are already getting ready and suited around to get in on this event by acting as if they're experts in law or neuro law when there is no grounds for any of that. It's already happening right now. So part of this is you, Sean, you, your audience, you, everybody, taking your Godhead back and stop hiring an attorney to represent you before the court, which is basically entering the temple of God. That's what it is. So you, an individual, need to go in and make these declarations in your own handwriting, in your own individuality, and sign off these things and then file them, because what they're doing is they're going to use the concept of um, voluntary compliance, which is how the dark side gets you to participate in all this shit that they put out for you. They don't give you full disclosure of what's going on. They give you partial disclosure, like when you go sign a credit card agreement. Nobody understands any of that. I know, because I've been in the courts. No judge, no attorney can understand any of that. They give you about 50 pages of words. Nobody reads that. Nobody understands it. Nobody can clarify what it is. Everything is contract law. That means you are responsible for the understanding and the decisions that you make. So you need to put your attorneys aside and you need to go in and make these declarations in court amongst yourselves. It's very important, because if you don't do it first, you won't know that it's happened to you, that these systems have invaded your nervous system already. That's how serious it is. And it has, because they're using nanoscale technologies to capture your nervous system. That's what the whole COVID shots were about. Well, they didn't give a shit about the disease. They give a shit about owning your body. They actually own your body now, because you took in their technology. They're using your body as sort of a battery pack for a cloud system that they're creating. So this is what's going on. But for the individual, they're saying, okay, well, okay, this is horrible. What do we do? Well, I'm telling you what to do. You can't sit back and watch as an observer. You have to completely take control of your entire cognitive liberty and human rights. And you need to take that as if you're the boss. You're the authority figure, because you are. It is not your elected officials. It is not your presidents. It is not the banks. It's not any of those guys. They've mind fucked everybody into thinking that they're the bosses and they're in charge. That's wrong. You're in charge. But you need to declare that to them. Try and tell everybody in this thing to take back your power. That's the most important thing. Like in your country, I know David Icke. He's right on target. He's exactly precisely right. I've known him for a long time. Great guy. He's there to help you. He's trying to get all of everybody, humanity, to make a stand at this juncture point, because you're going to see the biggest mental health crisis of all time happen. It's already starting in the U.S. right now. That's what's happening in real lifetime as I talk to you.
We got a question from Susan. What type of people want this to happen? What is the outcome they want? Is it passive control?
It's total, complete control, because the reason they're doing this is the powers that be, starting 50, 60, 70 years ago, decided they were going to get to this point, and they were going to, in their philosophy, the people that have not stood up and taken their power back and realized their divinity will be pushed aside. The type of people, I've met some of them. They're very cold, calculated, non-empathetic, and disconnected. They don't feel anything. They're almost non-human, and I can go as far as to say that they are non-human. I can say that now, because we've got sort of psychic invasion underway, and all of this stuff is going to come out. It's all going to come out. People are going to go nuts when they hear that. But I'm sorry, you're missing children. They're being harvested. That's why nothing's happening. Nobody's getting arrested, and nobody's getting busted, and nothing's happening. It's a very, very complicated thing. I'm not the first to say that. Other people have said it prior to me, and it's true. But people they're not there yet. They're not there yet. They're just figuring out that the mind control, yeah, it's real technology. What's going on.
So Agatha wants to know your thoughts on EMFs, direct energy weapons.
EMFs, you're using them right now. If you're on them, that's your computer emanating that energy out to you. All of these devices were never made for your health. They're all of them are unhealthy. We need a complete redo of all this tech, because most of it's garbage that they've made. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for you to be bathing in 5G, 6G, 4G. Your body is a product of nature. It's not a machine. They're trying to turn it into a machine. That's the whole point of this, because they're using micro escalation. Micro escalation is like hypnosis. If you want to get everybody on a mobile phone, you start off with pagers. That was the first. That's how they started it 30 years ago, and they did it very slowly over time to get the body ready for this event. Directed energy weapons, yes, they're real. They're being used. Neurocognitive strike weapons are being used on civilians, and they're being used on major populations. I was in Acapulco when they did one of them on that island. I was there for that event where it totally destroyed it. I reported live from it. Actually, I was one of the survivors that got out of there when they did that to the island. And people need to understand the most important part is we're in Star Trek level of technology. If you understand that part, then everything makes sense. Because I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to, whether they're generals, people in the intelligence community, scientists, how much they're compartmentalized. And they know this part, but they don't know this part over here. And I can tell you firsthand experience for years, that's a big problem, because it was created that way. So you don't have any linear line of story to connect the dots, as they say. It makes it very difficult. I know people in like super high positions that don't know anything at all. I don't even know how they got there, but they're there. I talked to them. I mean, I've interfaced with huge people to inform them this is what's going on, show them all the proof, show them all the documentation. They had no idea. They shouldn't be in these positions. Your elected officials are uninformed. They're not remotely qualified to be in those positions in the first place.
So Tristan is asking, is it even possible to disengage from all of this modern tech?
Yeah, it is. And you need to do that. Or you need to be able to create the contrast so you can go in and out of that world. Don't just be immersed in all this technology. You've got to go through a media fast. You've got to understand the difference between a highly wired central nervous system, which is generally the dense populations are, and the non-wired one, where you go into nature for 2 weeks. You don't have any books, you don't have any phones, you don't talk to anybody, you don't do anything. It's very difficult to arrange those things, but it's to recalibrate your nervous system and put you back in the natural state so you know what it's like. Because if you don't know what it's like, you don't know that it even exists. And that's part of the problem is a good portion of the population today, they had a cell phone shoved in their mouth at the moment they were born. They don't know. Their nervous systems are completely different, which means they perceive the world in a completely different way. And in order to get out of that, you need to know what it is first. You need to arrange so you can get yourself and allow your nervous system to calm itself back down and put it in tune with the planet again. You have to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah, makes sense. Andrew, does James have any information regarding popular TV shows being used to administer hypnotic mind control techniques?
Well, if people want to understand mind control, they're going to have to do more reading than they thought. And they're going to have to study the works of Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message, not the message. The message is a subcomponent of the medium. And when somebody is watching television, it alters the sensory balance of all the sensory input, which tells you what is happening. So, for instance, sensory balance is altered when you interface with a television or any technology. for that matter. And in order to understand how that works, you have to isolate one of your sensory inputs so that the other inputs are enhanced. What do I mean by that? If you cover up your eyes and you just listen to somebody you're talking to, or listen to what's going on in your environment, uh, that alters the sensory balance of all the other components. And you need to understand how that works. So, unless you've read Marshall McLuhan and have a very good understanding of what that means, you'll never understand mind control, because he was the only person that really explained how human technology interfaces and alters human perception. He was like the godfather for it. He was like the father of the net. Most of his predictions have come true now. You need to understand his works, and you need to understand also Alfred Korzybski's works. Alfred Korzybski was the guy that quoted, "The map is not the territory." He was the German intelligence officer that created general semantics. If you understand both of those things, and you'll understand how mind control works as just perceptual programming. Television as a medium itself, as long as you know what the TV is doing as you're watching it, the content is irrelevant. People say the programming content is something that's not nearly as powerful as the medium which it's coming from. I mean, some people won't understand what that means, but later on, when they look back and reference these books, maybe they can put this on pause in the future and go in or use ChatGPT to reference that, because you can stop and pause this, go into ChatGPT, and then reference those works as it relates to human perception, and then the electronics surrounding those environments come in and change your emotions towards the content.
Getting asked about music and mind control and electronic music mind control methods.
Yes, you can utilize any electronic medium through these two components there, and you can alter states with it. That was first done, invented by Robert Monroe. Monroe Systems, where they created HemiSync. They proved essentially that you can alter brain waves and alter how information is perceived under those conditions, and you can use it in music, and it is used in music. I mean, the oldest technology to install in altered states, and the American Indians know this, is the drum, which is a very, very secretive technology that most people don't even understand, because it was always the drum that allowed the American Indian to go into an altered space to acquire information about the enemy coming in, or anything else for that matter. So music is very important. Sound itself is probably a big secret. People don't really utilize it for their own benefit at all. They're just passive and allowing it to come in without understanding what really heartbeat as it relates to the drum, and through your nervous system, what that really means. So I would say, yes, music is a tool that's been used by big corporations to alter human perception and put people into alternate states. See, the reason why they do that is when you're in an alternate state, then suggestibility is much more enhanced than if you're in a non-alternative state, which is why hypnotists, they calibrate hypnosis using fractionalization. And they'll say, for instance, you're going deeper now and deeper and deeper, which means you're just enhancing, strengthening the alternate state that you're in before the language comes in, because language is also a technology, and that's how they control human perception is through language. People may add this like elements of it that are minor in comparison to the other elements. I mean, you can put a truck behind somebody's house and create synthetic telepathy, and they've had it for a long time, and it's been discussed in courts and so forth. So we're way down the line, but I've always said to people, whether in their passive positions or they're reading or ever, to be aware of your awareness. If you're aware of your awareness, that's your first step to liberating yourself. Very, very important. You have to be aware of your awareness and how human perception works and how it's influenced and what's been done and what's actually going on.
So, did the Nazis take this to a grand scale with the marches, the gatherings, the pomp and circumstance, the speeches and the music and the symbolism?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Group dynamics. CIA is very interested in group dynamics. That's why you should never go to big group events, especially political ones, because they're all hybridized and used and weaponized for the intelligence community, and they experiment on these large groups as well. I've never been to, except for one, a large event, a political event, a music event, that's different. Political event, never would go to because I know what they're doing. And yes, the Tavistock Institute is directly related to what the Nazis has done and all the behavior modification science that came out of England. It was all brought into the US under Operation Paperclip, and everybody said that a million times. It's true, but it was perfected in the United States first.
And what is the Tavistock Institute?
The Tavistock Institute is the Institute of Human Affairs and people's relationships to human affairs and their value system. And people can look up the Tavistock in their history, and they've been involved in the psychiatric, psychological capitalization because the mental health profession and psychiatry all came out of the Tavistock Institute and how that all came together. Because the British intelligence was involved in all of that stuff. There's been many countries that contributed to the science, but it was not perfected. It's perfected in the U.S. The contribution of that science came out of the British intelligence and the Tavistock Institute. So did torture and child abuse and every other godforsaken thing that's going on.
You're getting asked as to whether Carroll Quigley gave insights into this in his book Tragedy and Hope.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of people knew that we would end up in this position.
Sihan is saying hypnosis as mental torture versus regression as healing.
Well, people need to understand hypnosis first because it's like dancing. You have to dance with the hypnotist to make it actually work better. Some people are more resistant to it, but people need to understand the Milton Erickson model of hypnosis and where that came from, and how language is a template for hypnosis, because it's the language of the unconscious that allows people to passively receive and absorb information.
All right, so is there anything we can wear to protect ourselves from tech waves, e.g., anti-radiation phone pouches, crystals?
Yeah, there is. There's lots of it. There are people are making a fortune on it, but I would just say have everything third party tested. Buy a tri-field meter, which will show you exactly how much energy is coming out of your devices, and do it yourself. Don't rely on a technology company to say that they're going to protect you from all this energy unless you do the actual management and check of that energy yourself. Don't leave it in the hands of somebody else. Be responsible for it. Don't just presume because they have a bunch of research and papers and always say it does this, that it actually works, because much of it doesn't. There's just scams everywhere.
So Janice is saying, telling us is great, but what's the process of doing something about it? You said to disengage from tech. Is that your answer to this?
There's two things. There's two important things. Do your own media fast. That means create an arrangement where you can go into nature alone or as close to alone as you can. That means no technology, no reading, no phones, no nothing, and just go in and be, because nobody knows how to be anymore. And you need to learn what that is. And you do it for like, you can, at least 3 days, but the longer the better. And then once you've been in there, then you know what it's like. Then you can go back into the industrial world, and now you have contrast. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do is you are part of your country, and you need to file declarations with a county recorder or whatever the federal register is. You're in Britain, so I don't know. It may be different. It may be called something different. You need to file these declarations in your court. You're allowed to do that. The court's there for you to use, and you don't need an attorney to do that. You can make these declarations, modify them how you want. If people if they go to my Patreon account, I will give them a template, an idea of what they can do, and then they can alter and change that template if they want and file it with the courts, because eventually people are going to have to start filing suit against the tech companies. And this is already going to start by the time people really see this in the US, probably in the next 2 weeks. There's going to be huge lawsuits filed by hundreds of people, some of it in pro se, and it's going to be all over the news about this technological takeover that they're doing. So those are two things, and necessary things you can do, and free. It doesn't cost you anything to do those things. It may cost you a little bit of time, but it's for your benefit.
So Christian wants to know, is virtual reality tech the next phase of mind control? Should we avoid it or utilize it for our benefit?
Both, meaning you need to know what it is as an experience, and then you need to know what it is not. So again, you have to have contrast, because I don't think you should avoid technology altogether. I think you should know what it does, know how it functions, what it was designed for, all of those things. And then you have the moral decision and right, because you have free will and free cognitive liberty, to decide whether or not you're going to utilize that or not. And then now you know what it is. Personally, the VR stuff, that is for the generation that is younger than you and I. Those people are the ones that were born with the internet on, born with a cell phone in their mouth. Those people walk right into that stuff, because they're mostly people that have been already wiped away by the system and weren't around when there was no internet and there was no phones. Their nervous systems are completely different, and their brains work differently. And those people need to understand and create contrast themselves, or their parents need to, because they're aiding and enabling all this entire mess that's going on. So I'm just saying to people, you have to be way more responsible. Any tech that's coming out for your phone or computer, or anything that enhances your nervous system as relation into the information environment, it's not for you. It's not for your benefit. They'll sell it as it for your benefit, but it's not in the long run. They're just taking all your information and using the interface to monitor your brain waves and monitor your nervous system, and then regulate it through those systems. That's what they're there for. That's what they're doing. That's why they're doing it. They don't give a shit about helping you at all. They keep you misdirected and occupied. That's what it's for.
Anonymous is wondering whether our cell phones are reading our minds.
Yes, they are. Yeah. They're telling you what they're doing now. And I mean, nobody's hiding in the people that are deciding this. They're telling you what they're going to do to you, and telling you what they have, and they're telling you how it's going to be, and they're presuming that by your own silence that you're going to go along with it. But you don't have to go along with it. You have to stand up and say, no, we're not fucking doing that, and you can go sit down. And if you're an elected person that is standing up and aiding and abetting this issue, then you're out. And if you can't talk about it, and you don't know what you're talking about, which is most of the cases, then you shouldn't be in that position in the first place. Because I don't know any elected officials that have the testicular fortitude and balls to talk about any of this stuff. Because all your users and all your people that watch this stuff, they need to know that the people that represent them, they don't know shit, okay? Because I've interfaced with a lot of them, and they're either scared of it or they're not going to do anything about it. So I'm telling you, the days of you passively sitting back and thinking that your elected officials are going to help you, they're not, because they don't even know what's going on themselves. They don't. When they talk to me, this is the face. Did you know that? No. How do you know that? Well, and my question is, how come you don't know that? You're making more money than me. I rest my case. I know you know this, and I know your listeners know it.
Question from Kat. Are they hitting the intelligentsia at universities and private schooling systems hard now?
I don't know what you mean hitting hard. I think, yes, they are. I think I know what that question means. Yes, they are. Because that's the places where people cognitively have decided to go there to acquire information to better themselves. So
I think
all the university, I can tell you for the US, for sure, There's nothing they're getting out of a university education that isn't designed to control your perception and indoctrinate you entirely. I mean, if anybody wants to understand how that operates, they set up the Skinnerian system. It was all exposed by a woman named Charlotte Iserby, who talked and wrote a book called The Dumbing Down of America. But that's America, I can tell you for sure. But I don't know precisely for England. I was a former resident there. I presume it's just as bad, but I don't know. But that's been done by design, yes. There's nothing
What do
in
you
the
think?
university.
What do you think about the role of Disney in this, and then celebrities like Britney Spears and Justin Bieber and their peculiar behavior?
They're mostly media casualties that were used by the system. Um, Disney as a corporation is just a vile pile of shit that should just be shut down. It is a complete, total, absolute, morally bankrupt bowel movement of hell on this planet, and it should be shut down. And people shouldn't even tolerate it at all. It's been involved with trafficking. It's aided and abetting all of that stuff, and it's been a big part of most of the operations related to MK Ultra, specifically Monarch, Operation Monarch, because Britney Spears, especially, she's just a disaster area and a victim. But when I say that, I don't say it to belittle her. I say it to inspire her to make a stand and step away and stand up against it. And that's
So,
to all those people over there, because I've been in Hollywood and I know that whole business over there. And most of those people, it's like low self-esteem theater there. None of them have the balls to do very little of anything. Very few. Mel Gibson does, a couple others do, but most of them don't, because you're not going to work if you're politically active and aware in that world. You'll never get a job.
so earlier on, a viewer asked for your thoughts on Ghislaine Maxwell having tinfoil around her phones when she was arrested. And Darren here has added a comment. Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's dad, worked with scientific magazines and corrupt Masonic friends to hide UFO and free energy, experimental nuclear physics. So the Maxwell family, are they steeped in all this?
Yeah, they rule by deception, Mossad. That's their template. They abide by that. That's the Mossad's not a physically prowess unit compared to others, but on the global playing field of deception, they're almost as good as the Chinese. I mean, it's the Chinese in them. They rule by deception. And that's how they've managed to acquire and affect and take over the United States, because the United States isn't run by the United States at all. We're under occupation from a foreign government and foreign banks, and we have been, and it's been fractured since 1947. And that's basically how we got into this gigantic mess.
So you don't foresee the release of any Epstein files, videos, hard drives, etc.?
No, because everything can be faked now. Everything can be faked. They know it. Everybody knows it. I mean, this is part of the problem with AI and everything else, is that courts, how can you have a court of law when everything can be faked? Language, voice, photographs, forensic evidence, all of it. I know the guy that invented the forensic evidence that puts your DNA to the scene of a crime. And it's been black box, but they have it. So, it's a big fucking mess, is what I'm trying to say, from every level. And you, the people, because I'm on your side. I've had enough of all these dickheads, and I never really wanted to be a really public figure, because I'm sick of all their bullshit and everybody else is sick of it. And I'm sick of just the complete distraction that we see and the corporate owned media, which is, it's not real. There's no, everybody thinks Trump said fake news, fake news. He didn't coin that. It was Marshall McLuhan that coined that, because he made the big quote about all the news being fake, because he understood the medium is the message, not the message. So it is fake. And what I'm saying is, when people are interfacing with all that, they're seeing pieces of it, pieces of a pie that's disconnected from the rest of it. So they don't get really have an idea about what's actually happening, because you can't quantify, neither can any intelligence agency say what's happening now. because now happens now, and then it happens a minute from now. So news is all distorted and never, they say it's in real time, but that's not even in real time either. They don't want people to know that when they bring in the brain computer interface and quantum, that it's over. And that's why I came to do this, to tell your audience to if they can't take the time to study all this stuff, at least claim their right to exist, the right to be here as divine incarnation, to be here at this time, because this is the most important time in history. And you have a place in this, hosting this on this platform. And that's why I'm encouraging everybody and taking the time to do this, because it certainly doesn't help me to come out and do all this at all. I mean, when I talk to people in a private forum with 250 people, and they said, "Aren't you afraid of it?" And I said, "I'm concerned, but I think that, you know, I'm not going to just lay down and take this shit, and neither should any of you. None of you should. I mean, I've seen what's happening in England. You have no free speech there. I mean, I grew up in England, and that place is ruined. It's ruined. It doesn't even look like England anymore at all."
Yep, I concur. Starmer is destroying it. So
Yep.
Sean has a question that ties in to what you just said. Have you actually received any threats for your work exposing this stuff?
Not this stuff. I've got threats for exposing technology, specifically cold fusion, by like some of the biggest, big people. It was serious enough that I had to alter my lifestyle drastically. But as soon as it happened, I did a press conference and went public about it. And the guy vanished because it was like a total career failure for threatening somebody over the phone. I mean, I called somebody up that had need to know information about cold fusion specifically, and I had threats immediately that my family would be killed by a special ops unit of the Navy if I continued to talk about this technology. And and this was my first conversation with this guy. I was very polite with him, and I invited him. I was calling him up at the suggestion of somebody else to invite him to talk about this particular subject. Very respectful. He knew exactly who I was, and he answered the phone like this. And then he threatened me immediately. And I'm like, what a piece of shit. But that's how these people are. I don't know why anybody looks up to all these people that they think mean something in the public. Most of them are just gutless turds. And I can tell you that for sure, because when it comes time to actually say something that matters, none of them are there. They're all worried about their image. They're worried about their money. They're worried about, what's going to think about them. That's the problem, because people don't have the balls to come out and say it about what's really happening and exposing where we're at right now. That's why I like zero respect for the Hollywood community that thinks they're on their moral high compass, telling everybody where it's at, because they don't know anything. They're just being used like whores.
Well said. We've got 1,000 watching live across all the platforms. So if you've got any questions for James, please get them in the chat now. And GC wants to know about native populations that do not use technology. Are they going to be coming for them with mind control?
No, because they'll be phased out, because they won't be able to compete with everybody else. There's going to be a bifurcation of the species where people are going to go off grid and create their own communities. It's already starting to happen now. I don't know how that will survive. When you said native, I wasn't sure if you were talking about Native American or indigenous cultures. I think you meant that, because I know indigenous cultures in the United States. Nobody knows this because the people in the United States completely ignore the American Indians. They're probably the most politically astute. They know exactly what's going on because they know they're ignored. They know they've been slaughtered. They know nobody gives a shit about them. So they're very aware of exactly what's going on, because I deal with the most prolific of them, which is the Lakota Sioux tribe in the United States. They know exactly what's going on because I know their tribal elders and the council there, and they're way more informed than 95% of the public. So I hope that answers the question.
What does James think of the gateway tapes to go out of body?
Those are the Monroe. That's Bob Monroe who invented that tech. It's very good for understanding the process of leaving the body at night. and that entails. I would go do the Gateway experience at the Monroe Institute yourself, because it was because of that location and Marianne Shenefield and Bouchard and all these other people that you never heard of that built our remote viewing tasking technology, which you're as good as they are and you should learn it for yourself. But that's where it came from. So yeah, I do recommend that you check that out.
C wants to know, how can people go off grid when Gates and his mates are buying up all the land?
Well, then it becomes, who are you related to the law that buys that land? And I'm talking to American people right now, because most American people don't even know who they are, because they haven't even redeemed their own certificate of birth, which was collateralized upon their birth and then sold off to the banks. And they don't even know what that means, a good portion of people. So they don't know that they are actually under the law. The body is the land of the United States, but that's a legal understanding that people haven't gotten to yet. And I don't expect your European listeners to understand that. Some Americans might understand that, because there's people I know that they've redeemed all their birth certificates, they've gone into court, they've done anything, they don't have any financial problems anymore, and they have their own land and nobody touches them. And there's a small amount of the people that have done that in the United States, but it takes a long time to understand that and do that process, but it does exist.
How do declarations protect us in practice?
Because when you have a reason to go into court to go after somebody that's hurt you, or you have a claim against a cell phone company for giving you cancer and not telling you that buying their phones and putting them up to your ears would give you brain cancer, and drinking the water from the city that you're contracted to pay for, and and they don't tell you it's poisoned. All these things, you need to make these declarations so that when you go into court, the person that you're representing, yourself, and you stand before the judge who represents the bank and God, that you have declared this yourself first, so that when these violations of contract occur, you have remedy and you can go after it in equity law. That's what I'm telling you. That's the short version of that. It's important that, because for the people in the United States, they need to go back and redeem themselves so they understand who they are versus who they think they are, with the birth certificate of manifest, which is controlling the economy of the United States, because they're still in the citizens of the U.S. are still prisoners of war under those conditions. They don't think they are, because they've been mind fucked into thinking otherwise. But that's the actual truth.
Are you familiar with Charles Austin Angel and his work with cold fusion?
No, that one I'm not. I mean, I've done interviews with all the top people at the very beginning when this happened, and it's on their websites. And reason I got into that was because of Walter Bowart and other people, because we knew that technology would come out. That would be the first one that comes out. That would give everybody a chance to decentralize and have their own power source and create their own community based on those things. But I don't know that person specifically, personally.
How does MK Ultra achieve occupation of citizens worldwide that have nothing to do with them?
By their participation utilizing computers, cell phones, and their surrounding physical body from 6G. So if you're going to work in any civilized environment, most of the world now is using cell phones. Not all of it, but that's going to get everybody integrated. Like Africa, they're screwed already because they just let China take over everything over there. And all these communication systems are coming in to hybridize them already. And they're when you go into Africa, it looks like the U.S. in the early 90s when cell phones just first came out. And they're just being bombarded with technology that they're not ready for. And they and other cultures that jump into that computer cell phone world, they're going to be taken over by their participation in using it. When you use it, it uses you.
Helena wants to know about Promise software.
Promise software, that came out a long time ago to track all the banks. that is something that the famous whistleblower that left to Russia, the man movie about it, Oliver Stone did. I can't remember his name at the moment. He talked to Promise Software, what that is. See, what people need to know is that when you interface the quantum computer, the brain, the computer, and interface all of that into one cohesion, you're not going to have banking anymore. You're going to have a complete, total changeover in cognition. You'll be able to learn a language in a second. The neural capabilities will be legislated. They'll legislate consciousness, is what they're trying to do now. You may notice in some countries that they're trying to pass laws to control language. Like, you're not allowed to criticize Jews. That isn't what you think it is. What it is a step towards legislating consciousness, because they know those laws are merely as a template to introduce that effect into culture by controlling thought and controlling language. Even though when people hear it, they think that's preposterous. I'm going to say whatever I want, how I want, when I want. Of course, they couldn't enforce that, but that's not the point. The point is to put the template down so that they can enforce it neurocognitively through the electronic environment, which is surrounding everybody right now.
I'll just add a little bit. So with the Promise software then, Robert Maxwell was a chief peddler of that, Glenn's father, and there was a back door. He sold it to as many countries of the world as possible. And the Israeli intelligence had a back door whereby they could go in and access, what the intelligence that the other countries were gathering. There's a lot more to it. And Ari Ben Menash, who was former Israeli military intelligence, I interviewed him 6 years ago. We're about to put that interview back up. We're just doing a few edits. Candice Owens was talking about it the other night, but we're about to put that back up. All right, so Kat, how do they rationalize Malthusian checks on humans?
I think because they're dissociated. A disassociated individual can commit a crime. An associated one cannot. And what does that mean? A disassociated means, like, if I knife somebody and I face them, I hit a knife into them, an associated person will react to the response that the person that's getting knifed will feel. Okay, that's one modular perception. A disassociated one, they'll see that and observe it, and they won't feel anything. It's those type of people that are being put in these key positions. It's those type of people that can press a button and 10,000 people are dead in another country, and they have no remorse, no feeling, nothing about it. It's those type of people that are in all these key positions. It's the behavior. We're dealing with very unhealthy people in key positions that are unhealthy behaviorally. And I'll give you an example. The head of Palantir is a very mentally ill person. And you can see that if you're watching closely the pathology of his interviews that he's doing, talking about Palantir, which is basically a takeover technology, which will completely put a totalitarian system in of rulership over personal information and how it's used for you or against you. Because everybody thinks, they've had encrypted systems that privatize all their information, but that's not true at all. And the public's being lied to about the quantum computer situation, because there's two now, one in the US and one in China, and they're very different. They do different systems. So they can see everything you're doing. They know all your porn chapters, what you've done, everything you've ever said. It's all like a skeleton, like an X-ray now. That's where we're at for everybody. That's the truth of the matter.
You're being asked about religion. Is it a form of mind control?
It's a form of controlling human perception. Believe it or not, I'm a ordained minister. I did so and became ordained because I came to the realization that my own spiritual evolution and everything is up to me, not at some priest or some church or anything else to tell you how to evolve and what's right and what's wrong. I'm in charge of that ultimately at the end of the day. So your godhood and your spiritual evolution is you. You have to do it. You can come back here a million times if you want, but if you want your own, be in charge of it and understand that and get to a certain, you don't go to an outside source to enhance spiritual evolution. I know, like high level church people. I met them at Mar-a-Lago, and I just can't believe people bow down because you're a cardinal or you're a high up with the Vatican. Sorry, it didn't. There's nothing holy about these people. You're holy yourself. So stand up and be that way. Set the example. Don't get your example from them, because there's nothing holy in any churches, especially the United States. None. They're all totally destroyed. All of them. The Catholic Church, Mormon, you name it, whatever sect, they're all corrupt in the United States. I can say that clearly because I've looked into all of it. I don't know about all of them outside, but in the U.S., since I'm from there and I take responsibility for the actions of my own government, they're all corrupt.
Well said. Yeah, we've had Kevin Annette exposing a lot of that.
Yeah.
So S wants to know, I am curious, how does power of language and mind control work on people who think in multiple languages and have very multi-layered and unique thought processes and absorption of information?
Usually, that's a great question, because that's the Worf hypothesis about how when a person learns a new language, like we're English, we speak English, and we've started learning Chinese, it would alter our human perception. Learning a new language, it rewires the brain. So people that speak multiple languages, they still have a tendency to become hypnotic under their own native language. So if you and I spoke 4 different languages, our first one would be English. So hypnosis would be a lot easier to do on us without our consent than other languages would, because it's ingrained in the central nervous system longer. It was the first thing that we learned, because we learned it from my mother in the womb, the English spoken language. We heard her speak first, and we learned it when we came out. So that's far more ingrained and way more powerful than a person that speaks multiple languages. A person that speaks multiple languages is subjugated to the effects of these type of tech in their native language, not the foreign ones. Even though I tend to think that people that speak multiple languages have a much better worldview, because they can perceive and understand cultural bias and language bias between different countries and people, because we see the world differently.
Okay, another question from S. Are you familiar with the book by Robert Duncan, The Matrix Deciphered, all about the black ops, EMF, bioweapons? And if yes, can you confirm that all that is written there it indeed exists?
No, I can't, because I have not read that entirely. I imagine, just to my intuitive feeling, that much of what he said in there is probably right on. Because when we did Operation Mind Control, we contained that type of technology in there, and we knew that was ongoing. And there's private contractors making this type of technology and utilizing it for courts, because this all comes down to courts and law. Because people that are trying to get remedy in courts that are victims of all this, they don't even know where to start, because the mental health profession and law itself is fused together. In the U.S., I know for sure. In Britain, I don't for sure.
All right, next question. With a wide view lens, you see great reset narrative surfacing everywhere, but is it from a central point? Recent games, media, Vaticans.
Yeah, I deal with 2 people that are directly involved with that, and yes, the reset is real, but it's not going to occur until certain crime is dealt with on the planet, because it's the largest event change in history. So it has to happen, because the world economy cannot work under the general accounting, because of, you can't make fake money out of thin air like the United States does. And the foreign banks that control the United States, they captured and stole the world, and that's how all these billionaires that are doing a technology takeover. They did it in the United States because you can get and amplify and create money out of thin air in the United States. And then if you know what you're doing, you can dissolve all of that. But that's how they stole the world. That's how they did it. And the banks are in tremendous trouble, huge trouble. They're trying to get and acquire quantum encryption that can save them from the quantum computers that are available now. Because banks right now, nothing's safe in any banks right now. They don't want anybody to know that, and they're sitting around watching what's happening in the quantum computing world, scared shitless because people are going to realize that they're not relevant anymore, and they're not. They're still scumbags, but they're not relevant.
What does James think of the reincarnation trap and memory wipes, etc.?
Well, they already have memory wipes now. I know that technology is available and it's being spoken about all over the place. That was what was referred to in the 80s and 90s called screen and scrambles, that would take a memory, and that usually memory is memorized by like a film. It has a beginning and it goes through a stream and then has an end when you memorize something. And it's memories composed in a certain part of the brain. And when that part of the brain is interfered with, the memory or the film of it is broken up and it has time distortion. So that's done to discredit somebody. So in case they go in and, what do you recollect in the courtroom of what happened on the night of this with this murder? And then it's all screwed up. That's what a memory wipe is. And I forgot what the other part that person said. So it's
It
gone.
was to do with reincarnation.
Oh, reincarnate. Yeah, I don't know. I can't say for certain. I know where that comes from, and it was a meme started saying that if you reincarnate, you get stuck here over and over and over again. And I don't believe that's true. I think you have a choice when you leave the body, because you don't ever die, and they don't want anybody to understand that either. You mutate into another form of consciousness, and you can decide what that's going to be.
What are your thoughts on cyber hacking and subterfuge on the ordinary person?
Well, with what I know about what's going on in the quantum world with computing, hacking as that'll be a obsolete type of personality, because two groups will have complete control over all the information environment entirely, and hackers per se, they'll be kind of pushed aside, needed but pushed aside. But what's going to happen is that they're going to legislate neuro law. So that's how they're ultimately going to control populations, because they'll be able to institute pre-crime. When Tom Cruise did his movie Minority Report, that was very accurate of where we're going to be. I mean, they're already beginning the micro-escalation process in the United States to put everybody, their faces, hands, and biometrics into systems. And they're doing it by, like in the United States, when you go through the airport, they say, oh, we're going to take your picture, but they don't tell you can opt out. They don't tell you that. They just make it look like you got no other choice and you got to go through. And then they put signs right next to after that saying that, oh, we get rid of all this information in 12 hours. Bullshit. I mean, and of course, nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's filing complaints about that, because they're just believing that they get rid of all your information in 12 hours. And they have to use that because, we can't fly with any safety anymore. And, we couldn't do it in the 80s and we can't do it now. And everything's a mess, and they're just taking all your data and everything. And that's what they're doing it for. It's a tool for compliance, voluntary compliance, and how they do it is a hypnotic event, because they do it through fractionalization. Fractionalization is something you do it in pieces, step by step. When you step down a staircase, that's fractionalization. And they do that on the public to make it look like and feel like you're complying to something you're not aware of the end goal of it. That's how they do it. That's what airports are doing. That's what they're doing throughout the law enforcement business. They're doing it in England, I know, and they nonstop in America.
What should we know about underground cities and the underground network?
Plenty, because that's the breakaway civilization that is controlling all this stuff. They're aware of the extraterrestrials. They're aware of all the technology we have. They're aware that a group of people have decided they're going to get rid of 90% of the population, and they're decided that they're going to be the survivors of all this. And it's not all human. It's a mixture of human and non-human. And that's what's going on underground. And the United States has the top layer, and it has the underground cities, which are across the country. And they're preparing for all this for a very, very long time. And a lot of people know about that already. It's very public.
How specifically is the medium the message? Frequencies.
Very difficult to understand, but the medium, like the phone, controls the message, because what that means is when you start using the phone, it alters the quality of the message. Because if I make a phone call to you old school, you hear my voice, Sean, but you don't see me. That's the why the medium is the message, because it distorts the perception of me when you receive the message. You remember the olden days where your phone was stationary in your house and you would call somebody and the conversation would be had acoustically, and I would fill in the spaces of what you were saying and how you would feel from my eyes looking in a different way. This is why when radio was first introduced, there's an effect that was quite common called auto amputation of the senses, where people would watch the radio as if it were a person talking to them, when they weren't trained to realize that the space was acoustic and all around them, and they could go in the kitchen and listen. But they would watch it because it amputated one of the senses. And previously, when we would listen to somebody, it would be face to face. So that's what the medium is the message means. It alters the sensory balance depending upon what the technology is.
If you don't use a cell phone, are you still affected by cell phone technology?
Yes, you are.
Would it depend how far away you are from it?
Yes, it would. But it's going to change, though, because the Starlink system was set up to have a top-down control over everything. So now that Musk has set that up, he really decapitated the entire global population by doing that. Because now Wi-Fi is through the air, it's through satellite, and they can use those systems as direct energy weapons on populations and individuals quite easily. So I don't think he knows what he's doing. I know he doesn't, and he's compartmentalized as well.
What about Project Bluebeam?
Bluebeam, that's the fake alien invasion. That's what's going on right now. They're faking it to cover up the real one, and the real one's already underway because it's already happened. Because people already know, and many people do, that they're already walking on the ground, and they've already intermixed with society. So Bluebeam that was the fake alien invasion to cover up the other one, to cover up the real one. Create a fake one, keep everybody looking that way while we invade this way. So I don't like these disclosure groups. I know a lot of the people that are on these disclosure groups about this stuff, and I don't agree with how it's going or what Greer is saying about it, actually.
How does this relate to the Inslaw affair and the corruption at the DOJ?
That I would say I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Are you able to speak on the Luigi Mangione case?
No, I'm not. I'm not aware of that case. People think that I track all this stuff nonstop, 24/7, and I don't. Much like I track what goes on in the courts and what's going on in the neuroscience and how it affects behavior and culture. I'm mostly like a media ecologist, which is my primary focus is, how these technologies affect culture, thinking, understanding, and how they interrelate and how it affects how we deal with each other. That's my primary thing because that's what all this is doing. They're hybridizing everything. So I don't track. There's so much of it now because back when we were public about it and trying to educate people in the 90s, there was nobody to be found, and people thought we were absolutely off the wall. So we kept quiet. We only talked to the people that were informed. I never ever thought it would get this bad. I made a bad decision, and I was optimistic, thinking that humanity would stop this, and we'd never get to this point. And sadly, it was very mistaken.
Does James include NHI in the calculus as collaborators with the control objective, or possibly as a variable that could assist us in the struggle against a centralized control system?
Yeah, they're totally involved because they're involved with physical health and the body template as itself, and they're using the physical body to energize the cloud and to use it for certain purposes. Because a lot of these people are going to be dead, but a lot of them are going to be controlled zombies. A lot of them are already. I mean, they essentially are already. Um, and yes, it is going to be used for centralized control behaviorally and through voluntary compliance, which people will volunteer for it because they won't even know what's going on, and they'll walk right into it uninformed and not know what's going on.
Is it a coincidence the global earthquake hotspot map aligns with the global light rail infrastructure project? The two maps overlay near exact, and the advancements line up to EQ events that surface.
I've heard about that. I don't know enough to be sure on that. To be honest, I don't know enough, and I prefer not to speculate. But
Yeah, I think
whatever it is, it's advanced tech shit that's being used against the public. That I can pretty much bet 100% with my life.
James, you've been really generous with your time. We've answered all of the pertinent questions. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers? And I'll put your links in the live chat again right now. They're also in the description box.
People, wherever you see this, whenever you see this, whether it's today, tomorrow, the next day, a year from now, the most important thing you can ever going to do is to realize that you're a divine incarnation, and you need to act like one, and you need to take your power back, because we're coming to a point with the entire species that it is going to be co-opted out, and the normal natural living man woman will cease to exist. And this is the big moment in history, and I hope anybody that sees this is willing to have the strength and courage to stand up in their courts and in front of their elected officials and everybody else that are aiding and abetting this process, to take your power back, because if you're here, you have a right to be here, you have a right to exist. So thank you so much for inviting me on your broadcast here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for spending so much time with us, James. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to close the show. You take care, my friend. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Take care, man.
Bye. Bye-bye. What a phenomenal guest, folks. Absolutely mind-blowing information. Thank you for all of your questions, for keeping it going as usual. You all make my job much easier. Looks like we've got a lot of support for James in the chat. While I have been on the air, Kirby Summers has emailed me, and it looks like we might be on for 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, which is great. And then we have got at 8 p.m. tomorrow, Kevin Annette on Queen Elizabeth, Disappeared Kids, and the Epstein list. That's going to be a hell of a show. And we are working on at the Ari Ben Menashe. We're re-uploading it. We've just got to edit a few things out to be within the guidelines. It's mind-blowing what he says about Israeli intelligence and Maxwell and Epstein and Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. So you've got that one coming up. And we're still waiting for the final approval of Epstein's niece. We've edited it now. We're just waiting for the final approval. And that one is insane as well. So got some fascinating ones coming up. Thank you for tuning in, folks. I hope to see you in some of